Something that I see across a lot of different science fiction is what is outside the galaxy. It's always an intriguing question. What's beyond those edges of the story as far as the characters have gone? What's next? And so today we're going to explore what is outside the 40k galaxy. We'll be drawing on a ton of different short quotes from codexes and novels. The first one I want to get out of the way, and it's what most 40k loreheads are aware of, the Tyranids, coming to the 40k galaxy in waves, and cunningly timed by the Tyranids with the next Games Workshop edition launch, and with perhaps a uncountable number of them still making their way to it. The Tyranids are beyond the edge, making their way into the 40k galaxy, having devoured another one. That's pretty well known. Now let's go into some more obscure, interesting stuff. From the Codex Astra-Militarum 8th edition. Admiral Hurok forms a powerful military bloc, comprising his imperial fleet, as well as armoured and infantry regiments of the Astra-Militarum. The High Lords of Terror cannot allow such a concentration of forces, but know that assassinating the Admiral could lead to a costly civil war. Hurok is instead sent on a mission to explore deep in the Galactic Gulf. For 2 decades, reports reached Terra, detailing the conquering of new systems for the glory of the Emperor. Then the communications cease. Contact is never attempted with the systems mentioned in Hurok's reports. So if not Tyranids there, there seems to be some enemy that can hurt the Imperium beyond what I'll dub the Galactic Rim. From Horus Heresy, Book 5, Tempest. Ancient Tyranius was a Contemptor pattern dreadnought of the Ultramarines' 8th chapter. He was born a Terran and was inducted from the Midifric Hive levies towards the end of the Emperor's campaign to bring unification to Terra in preparation for the Great Crusade. He served in the earliest decades of the Great Crusade before being appointed to command his legion's commitment to the First Magellan expedition. Tyrannus was amongst the few to return from that doomed endeavour, though he had sustained such terrible wounds that only interment within the armoured sarcophagus of a dreadnought saved him from death. So again there we just get that repetition that there is some threat beyond the rim. In Horus Heresy, Book 9, Crusade, Thramas would become one of the most staunch supporters of the Imperium in the Eastern Fringe, and the centre of many campaigns launched into the dark void beyond the galaxy's edge. Such was his importance to the Great Crusade that the Master of Mankind, the Emperor, himself once set foot upon this world, pausing briefly during the prosecution of the 8th Extragalactic expedition and the assault on the ancient Craven meganest on Gorgoron, where no light had ever shone. And yes, if you've checked it out, I've covered that in a short. So that's our first confirmation after the Tyranids, the Crave, the psychic creatures that can control others. They can be beyond the edge of the galaxy. What about specific races? The Satan is one that kept coming up, and we'll go into a few quotes on that now. Such a thing had no name. For what use would a being that had brought entire civilizations into existence and then snuffed them out on a whim have of a name? It had been abroad in the galaxy for millions of years before humanity had been a breath in the Creator's mouth, had drunk the hearts of stars and been worshipped as a god in 1,000 galaxies. Now I'm assuming from the context this quote leads us to, with the drunk from the hearts of stars part, this is referring to the Satan, and the important part here is worshipped as a god in 1,000 galaxies. For these sun-eating vampires, if you think about it, why would they be limited to and drink from one galaxy when they can run amok in many? And a quote from Nightbringer, as further evidence, every flaring beam of light ripped from that star washed its power over the ship, shortened the star's lifespan by 100,000 years, but the occupants of the starship cared not that its death would cause the extinction of every living thing in that system. Galaxies had lived and died by their master's command. Whole stellar realms had been extinguished for their pleasure, and entire races brought into existence as their playthings. What mattered the fate of one insignificant star system to beings of such power? And now a few one-offs touching on different areas that I thought were pretty interesting. We are told the webway once spanned the galaxy, even stretching out into the empty void beyond. Those days are long gone. making it likely the Old Ones also could travel outside the 40k galaxy using the webway that they'd created. Maybe that's where they went after being defeated. And I believe, if memory serves, the webway protects you from the effects of the warp, therefore thinking that this is within the warp. So it's likely the warp also extends to other places too, and we'll return to that idea shortly. For the next, what is Zeis Uthra? I just want to define this for you before we go into the quote. It's an elder craft world that fled to avoid the great cataclysm, and they carried on worshipped the dark and dead gods of the Eldar after this point, and they were infiltrated by a gene stealer cult as well, so not happy times for these fellas. And now from Rise of the Inari, Ghost Warrior. Now you know that Zeis Uthra, it disappeared just after the fall, and has not been heard of since. Some say it passed beyond the galactic veil, others say it was destroyed or devoured by the great abyss. Zeis Uthra is a myth, so we also know that a craft world can go beyond the galactic whim. And we touched on the webway earlier. How far does the reach of the ruinous powers extend? If you think about it, if the webway goes beyond the galaxy's edge, and it's in the warp, then so does the warp, and so does the power of the ruinous powers. This is from Dead Sky, Black Sun. It is a cry of summoning, he said. Pausanias and Leonid looked strangely at him as the demon's roar ceased, and the fragile veil of reality pulled apart with a dreadful, ripping sound, as of tearing meat. A black gouge in the walls separating realities opened, filling the air with sickening static, as though a million noxious flies had flown through from some vile plague dimension. Awful knowledge flooded Uriel Ventris as he stared into the portal opened in the fabric of the universe. He saw galaxies of billions upon billions of souls harvested and fed to the Lord of Skulls, the Blood God. Emperor's mercy, wept Uriel, as he felt much of these deaths lodge like a splinter in his heart. New life and new purpose had once filled these galaxies, but now all was death, slaughtered to sate the hunger of the Blood God, whose fell name was a dark presence staining the coppery wind that blew from the portal, a stench of deepest, darkest red, whose purpose was embodied in a single word, a single rune, and a legend of simple devotion: blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne. Khorne, Khorne, Khorne. So even the warp extends to other galaxies. We get some hint of that here, though he's been shown a vision, so it's not entirely reliable, of course. That's from the beauties of 40k, the infinite branching off of intriguing new paths. And what about objects from outside the galaxy? Here we look at a quote from Mephiston, Revenant Crusade. I just want to say that this metal box seems to be made by the Satan, or perhaps an other race we've not heard of. The metal box was delicately engraved with astrological designs. These were glyphs in a language he had never seen before, and a complex pattern of grids and ellipses. The lines showed systems of stars, sizes and images, but none of them familiar to Mephiston. There was also a circular projector attached to it. Mephiston's mind returned to the books of his Librarius, the esoteric and ancient collections, those that dealt with artifacts from other galaxies, objects so arcane that they could manipulate dimensions on their own, altering perceptions and physics without the need for the treacherous currents of the warp. Sounds very Necrony and very satanic to me. Mephiston's infallible memory led him to the page he sought, a faded diagram of the prehistoric object now before him. An orchestra, he said. Now this refers, I believe, to a device called the Orchestrion, which, from what I gather, has this ability. Again, this is a quote. I know it creates a psychic void. It disrupts the etheric energy sorcerers use for their witch sight. It clouds their minds and leaves them blind. Very much a sort of a Sisterhood of Silence, null effect there, and I know that's part of the story. So we started the video with the question, what's outside the 40k galaxy? It appears a little disappointingly to be much of what's in it, such as the Crave and the Tyranids. But what we have learned is how far the reach of some of the beings within the 40k galaxy stretches. The Satan can go further than the 40k galaxy, as can the Old Ones, as does the Webway and the reach of Khorne. Now if that's true, that really throws the bleakness of 40k into a whole new cast of light in my mind. No matter what plan the Emperor or the Necrons or any other clever ideas, no matter what they come up with, the gods of chaos will always be there. They can never truly be defeated. I understand that the setting is grimdark, but I like to have a little hope in there just to make things fun, because the 40k verse is not the only galaxy they draw power from. Therefore, even if you walled yourself off in the webway, as was the Emperor's plan, it might not have worked, because they can draw on the worship of beings from other galaxies, if they need to. So guys, comment down below anything I'd missed. If there's any lore of something that's outside the 40k galaxy that isn't within it, I would love to hear about it. Drop me a comment down below if you know, and tell me what it's from. And hell, even post a quote for me, I would love to know. I look forward to speaking to you in the comments.